Hello, and welcome to a live Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. I'm your host, Keri. Today is March 25th. I hope you're having a great March. Good to see some regulars in the chat, and I hope you had a great weekend. We had a really beautiful one here in Texas. It's like the best time of year. It's right before first summer, second summer, end of summer, third summer, surprise summer again. It's right before it gets really hot. So it's been very nice. Anyway, good to see you guys. If it's your first time here, this is a live show that I do on Mondays and Fridays, 1 o'clock Central. We talk about what's in the news, what's on my mind, sometimes what's on your mind. And we do interviews occasionally. And we also have a couple of other shows. This Wednesday, I'll just make an announcement. This Wednesday at 6 o'clock, we're doing another That Christian panel, which is usually myself, Michelle from Force of Light Entertainment, Odin from OMB Reviews, Brahma Bull, and then we have different guests, and it's a place for people to come who happen to be Christian and talk about culture and pop culture from a Christian perspective. If you haven't seen it yet and you're interested in that, the last one we did 2 weeks ago, we discussed the film Ordinary Angels. So that was the most recent one if you want to go and check it out. But we're doing another one this Wednesday, 6 o'clock Central. One other announcement, if you are in the Austin, Texas area and you would like a ticket link for our house concert this Friday night, email me at deprogrampod@gmail.com and just tell me your screen name. And I'm going through all those emails today. So I will get back to you. I think I've gotten back to most people already. And I know there are some people already planning on coming. I can't wait to see you. Some of you I'll be meeting for the first time in person. But yeah, my husband and I do these house concerts a few times a year. And he's a really talented musician. I don't just say that because he's my husband. And he has a great wealth of talented friends. And so every concert's different. He brings different musicians, different style of music sometimes. And this one's going to be great. So I'm looking forward to seeing people. Okay. Today's topic. If you're not perpetually online, especially if you're not on Twitter as much as some of us are, you may not have been aware of this growing trend. It's been growing for a while, but it seems like it just reached kind of a boiling point recently. This growing trend of fringe, white supremacist, anti-Semitic groups of people trying to subvert Christianity and Christian language. One of their common phrases that they are trying to popularize at the moment is Christ is King. And I'm going to get into it by showing you what some people have said about it, because I know this is already, even before I started, there are people in the chat who are either disagree or upset or whatever. So let's just get right into what I'm talking about here. Let's start with this one. Is this the right one? Sorry, give me 1 second. Okay. Warning, trigger warning, whatever, not to use a leftist word, but warning if you have little ears in the room. There's going to be some language here. X in particular is pretty rife with these kind of messages. I myself get a lot of them. I've been getting a lot of them for the past few months. It seems to be increasing, the number of people who are saying things like this. Here's a tweet of mine. I said, it's pretty easy to tell the difference between the evildoers who are trying to co-opt the phrase Christ is King and actual Christians who do believe Christ is King. And so here's a screenshot of one user, for example, and this is anecdotal, yes, but I've seen tons of this. You can go into my replies and see it. So this person posted 1, 2, 3 or 4 times, Christ is King, Christ is King, Christ is King, rot skank, suck some more Jew cock, ya worthless sket, fuck yourself, get back to Israel, bye, go away, you hairy chimp, bye. This is what I'm talking about. A lot of people, when I posted about this yesterday, I finally commented on it. I've mostly been staying on the sidelines, just watching it happen. But I finally talked about it a little bit, and many people jumped in with interpretations of what I was saying that were not what I was saying. Many people were trying to drag Candace Owens to it. I didn't reference Candace Owens. I'm talking about the actually anti-Semitic, actually white supremacist people who, yes, are on the fringe, but who are trying to co-opt and subvert the phrase Christ is King. What they are doing, in effect, is taking the Lord's name in vain. They are literally taking God's name and using it in vain. It's not what they mean. A great explanation of this, there were a couple that I saw. Here's one from Joel Berry. He says, he does a couple of quotes here to try and explain what's happening. Quote, "Are you saying Christ isn't king?" Quote, "Are you saying Black lives don't matter?" And then he says, "Same devilish tactic used by the godless revolutionaries on the far left and the far right. Take a truth, turn it into a mantra, and use it as a cloak for evil." And he's exactly right. That's what some people are trying to do with this phrase at the moment. Here's another explanation. And here I quoted James Lindsay, who happens to be an atheist, who I think nailed it. And I said, it's a dialectical trap, like Black Lives Matter. Of course they do. Of course Black Lives Matter. But that's not what the phrase means to those who popularized it. Christ is king. Of course he is. I believe Christ is king. I'm a Christian. But that's not what the phrase means to those who are trying to popularize it in this specific way right at the moment. I'm going to read through James's thread because I think he explained it well. Let me make this just a little bit larger. He said, "Christ is king, as it is declared, is a sophisticated and manipulative dialectical trap like Black Lives Matter, and Christians are being baited into it by a few public figures and a band of antisocial troublemakers, likely led by a Fed. Christians are expected to agree with the sentiment because it is, in a way, a cornerstone belief of their religion." Yes, of course. Of course, we do agree with it, the sentiment. "They're often expected to participate in the refrain as well, just like Black Lives Matter. It's something undeniable for Christians, but it's also manipulative. Christ is king has more than one meaning." I would add now, very recently, I would add, not historically, just with what these evildoers are trying to do online. They mean something else when they say it. He says has more than one meaning now, of course, and one of them is very Catholic, dominionist, integralist meaning that is, in fact, intentionally hostile towards Jews. I don't know if I agree with him on that. I don't know enough to have an opinion about the Catholic meaning. And he says, and the people weaponizing this article of faith know that it's bad faith thinking it's clever. There are many verses Christians should pay attention to here that insist things about, quote, wolves in sheep's clothing, false teachers, taking the Lord's name in vain, and professing to be wise or clever while being fools. But the social pressure from brothers, quote, brothers, is high. He's right about the verses he's referencing. A likely response to me pointing this out again, and like last time, will be to be swarmed with attacks that I, quote, hate Christians, together with puerile demands that I, quote, bend the knee and, quote, confess that Christ is king, weaponizing that against me with Christians when I don't, meaning he doesn't hate Christians. There will also be a lot of anti-Semitism in the mix because the operators are operators and they're useful idiots, can't control themselves, known by their fruits, parentheses. He ends with that. Just know it's a deliberate manipulation, and at least some of the people doing it know that and are playing it. I agree with his overall premise here. I said, with the one exception of not knowing enough about the history of the Catholic dominionist meaning. But I agree with what's happening with these internet, what would you call them? Influencers. I hate that word, but yes, people who have a following. One of whom is Nick Fuentes. And I'm going to talk about him today. I don't usually criticize individuals publicly unless I'm pretty confident about my opinion in them. I have opinions on all kinds of people. I just keep to myself because you shouldn't say everything you think, and you could be wrong. I could be wrong about a lot of people. If you watch this channel for a while, I rarely talk about a specific person and opinions on who they are, what they're doing. I've done it with Andrew Tate. That's an example. I'm very confident about the fact that I think he's a grifter, a con man, a charlatan. And I think the same thing about Nick Fuentes. So I am going to talk about him today. I do think he is a false prophet. I do think he is leading people towards darkness. Fortunately, he still seems to be a fringe kind of thought leader, the Como thought leader, movement leader. But he seems to be growing in popularity. And the people who are running around saying things like this, the first thing I showed you, Christ is king. And then immediately afterwards, a bunch of stuff about sucking Jew cock and effing yourself and go back to Israel, you chimp, and stuff like that. These people are the people who idolize him, who stand for him, to use the word that the kids use. These are the people who I occasionally see in my replies, like saying crazy stuff that they've picked up from him. And so I think he is I think he is appealing to more people today than he was a year ago. And so I'd like to talk about why. Here, let me take this down. We're going to start with a couple things about Nick Fuentes. Now, one of the things that's happening here, before I pull this up, let me remove this and just give a caveat. Usually on this channel, I'm criticizing social justice ideology, also known as woke ideology. It's my old belief system. I was in it for 20 years. I think it's evil. It's racist. It's illiberal, censorious. It's authoritarian. It is currently culturally dominant. And I think it's the biggest existential threat that we face as a society. I think it's society destroying. On the flip side of that, you have this white supremacist ideology that is fringe. The social justice, the woke media, because this ideology is infiltrated. It's dominant everywhere. It's dominant in media. It's dominant in entertainment, politics, the church in some places, hobby groups. You can see it in education everywhere. And one of the lies that they've been pushing for years now is they're trying to pretend like there's this big white supremacist boogeyman and that's what we have to fear. And we're in a white supremacist country and there's all these white supremacists and they're the biggest hate group. And this is all BS. This is all crap. It's fringe. It's ridiculous. It's been fringe and ridiculous for a while now because of liberalism, because of Western values. In the 90s, we used to see it on Maury Povich. You would see these white supremacist clowns on Maury Povich. That's how fringe it is. You would see them on circus talk shows. Yes, they have their little protests and, very few people come. And as a society, we had come to a place of recognizing this is socially unacceptable. And we're still there. It's still socially unacceptable for good reason. But the woke left, it's like two sides of the same disgusting coin. The woke left has been trying to convince normies that there's this crazy white supremacist operation in the US, that it's this dominant ideology. It's not. It's projection what they're doing. They are the dominant racist ideology, the social justice left. They have an immense amount of power. And so when I look at these two ideologies, it's like Yes, they are two sides of the same racist coin. They both agree with the incorrect premise, the incorrect worldview, that the best way to look at the world is as a competition for power among identity groups, and that you should have this affiliation with your race or your gender, that this is very important, more important than God. That viewing the world as this competition for power among identity groups. Where they disagree is where they rank the groups. That's it. The woke left is just as racist as white supremacists. I've said this from the beginning. This is why I left it once I realized what it was. It's just as racist as white supremacy. The difference is currently, at this time in history, at this place and time, white supremacy is rightfully mocked, shunned, disavowed by the left and the right. But social justice, just as evil, woke, just as evil, just as racist, is lauded. It's not only socially acceptable, it's actually a sign. In this crazy culture currently, it's a sign that you're a good person. If you're racist against white people, if you're sexist against men, they currently society says that's a good thing. Some of the prophets, the leaders of the social justice, woke, cult, racist movement, identitarian movement, some of them, like Ibram X. Kendi, they come right out and say, yes, we must do racial discrimination. They admit it. That's what they teach. They don't often admit it like he does. He says, yes, we must do it in order to end this boogeyman over here that doesn't exist. What's happening, though, is they are creating this boogeyman. They're the reason why people like Nick Fuentes are gaining in some amount of popularity. The woke left are the reason. Because they call everyone white supremacists. They dilute the meaning of the word. Because they call everyone racist, they dilute the meaning of the word completely. Because they demonize white men, straight white men in particular, they demonize them. If you're in a society like we are, where the dominant belief system culturally in politics, media, entertainment, education, pop culture, where the dominant ideology says the best way to look at the world is as a struggle for power among identity groups. And you happen to be in some of the identity groups that are denigrated in that ideology, I can see why it's very attractive to some of those guys to say, okay, I am going to look at the world that way, and I'm just going to put my identity at the top. You are pushing people there. What is it? Newton's third law? Is it his third law? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. This is one of the things when I first left the social justice cult that I was worried about. Eventually, there's lots of things I'm worried about related to the repercussions of social justice, but this is one of them. Is at some point an overcorrection coming? I'm just talking off the cuff now. My husband and I were talking about this last night, and we've been watching a lot of history documentaries lately, and he's reading a lot of stuff about the CIA right now, and which is mind-blowing. And history can change very quickly, and I can envision a future. I hope I'm wrong, but I can envision a future in which society collapses as a result of social justice, of woke ideology, things get bad enough that an actual Hitler-esque kind of person, Mussolini kind of person rises to power, I can envision that happening. And do you know why? One of the reasons people will get behind it, there's several reasons that people could get behind it. Human nature doesn't change. Look throughout history. If you want to see how people behave, we're not evolved. We're not enlightened compared to people in the past. And so I think people could fall prey to that because, number one, whoever that person is will be able to point to all of the very real destruction caused by social justice, by woke, by identity Marxism. Will be able to point to the rubble and say that caused this. We're going to do the opposite. They're going to use a truth to sell something awful. I could see that happening. When Hitler rose to power, some of the stuff he was addressing were very real problems. He pointed to some very real things, and then he used that to sell his evil. He used that to sell the evil. I think people today sometimes think, oh, we're immune to charlatans and con men, and we're immune to bad actors, or I'm immune to. We're not. I see people fall for it all the time online with just internet influencers. Imagine if it was someone with political power. People fall for it all the time. Sometimes it's almost like they want to follow. I think maybe we're designed to follow. But as a Christian, I believe our shepherd is God. It's not someone who's using a truth to sell racism, using a truth to sell bigotry and demonization of people on the basis of race or sex or some other immutable identity characteristic. And so I could see people, maybe by the time my husband and I were talking, by the time we're 70, who knows? But it could be a very different world if we've gone through a collapse and there's a person like this who rises. And you know, the other reason it could happen is because the left, the ridiculous, evil, woke, social justice left, has called every person on the right Hitler. They've called everyone a white supremacist. They've completely diluted the meaning of the word so that people who are not on the left are rightly skeptical anytime they hear that. And some of them knee-jerk reflexively won't accept that label for anyone. That's what's happening with people like Nick Fuentes, for example, in my opinion. If you point out that his views are bigoted, if you point out that his views are white supremacist, you will have people responding to you saying like, oh, I guess you're part of the woke left now. Everyone's a white supremacist, aren't they? No. No. But some people are. But do you see why that's happening? Do you see why a person would respond that way? Because they're so easily, they're reactionary and manipulate. They think they're not manipulated like the left, but they're still manipulated because they go knee-jerk the other way, where they don't look at anything with an attempt at impartiality or reason. They're just going to oppose everything that if they hear those words now, they're going to reject it. We live in such a confusing time where the left has diluted the meaning of all these words. They've incorrectly used them, abused them, belittled the meaning of these words by calling everyone anti-Semitic, racist, sexist, bigot. That when posting about today's video, I had to say actual anti-Semites. I had to say actual anti-Semites. Somebody said, is that a bit redundant? They're either anti-Semites or they're not. And I was like, normally it would be redundant, but in 2024, I feel a need to say that because the left has sucked all meaning out of that word. Just like they just sucked all of the meaning out of words like woman, like liberal, like harm. They completely destroyed language so they could control it and control people. And a side effect of that is you then get people who knee-jerk react if any of those words are used accurately. So I do have fears about where we could be in 70 years. There were people responding to me saying, okay, yeah, but the white supremacist is still fringe and they're, oh, sorry. Did my video stop? No, I just got some kind of update. But there were people responding and they were saying it's still fringe and it's the woke left and it's BLM and it's Antifa and they're the ones just, wreaking all the havoc, having the riots that are leading to deaths, destroying businesses. Yes, I absolutely agree with you. That is true. That is exactly what's happening. But do you not have the ability to see into the future about potentials, possibilities? Are you myopic? Because I'll tell you, the social justice woke left, it didn't become culturally dominant overnight. It was a slow build. I picked it up in the 90s in college, but people were picking it up before in the decades before that. It was a slow build, but when the fire lit, it went mainstream fast, seemingly overnight, but it had been brewing for decades. And if you had said to someone, I guess the average person if you had said in 1990, I'm worried about this identitarian leftist ideology that's taking over and dominating. I'm worried about it. This ideology that wants to mutilate kids, cut off their genitals, this ideology that says biological sex isn't real, this ideology that says it's impossible to be racist towards white people, this ideology that says, racial discrimination is necessary. I'm worried about that becoming culturally dominant and taking over. If you had said that in the 90s, most people would have said, you're crazy. That's never going to happen. That's so fringe. People were telling me, even as recently as when I first started leaving woke left, 2016 or 2017, there were liberals I knew who saw the problem and agreed with me. Yes, this is a problem at college campuses, they said. This was in 2016 and 17. They said, Keri, I see what you're talking about. Yes, it's a problem. Yes, it's not liberalism. Social justice woke ideology is illiberal. I agree with you, they said, but it's just at college campuses. Don't worry about it. No, it's never going to become mainstream. They said this in 2016 and 17. It was already becoming mainstream. They didn't think it was going to escape the colleges. They said, no, these kids will leave college and they won't be able to get a job in the real world with this ideology and they'll grow out of it. And, this is just what happens at colleges. Young people get radicalized and then they grow up. No, because in 2016 and 17, it had already escaped the colleges, but people were still saying that to me. They still couldn't see it becoming culturally dominant. And so where I sit now in 2024, I don't know what the future holds, but could I see an extreme overcorrection happening at some point? Yes. Do I see seeds of it growing online in these little fringe, ridiculous white supremacist communities? Yes, I do. I've seen an uptick in it ever since October 7th. The other thing that happens when you try and talk about this is there are people who show up in the comments and want to put a lot of words in your mouth about Israel, about war. I haven't said anything about that. I'm anti-war. I don't agree with sending money to Israel to support their war. But I also don't agree with saying, I don't have an opinion on their foreign policy. And I'm not going to be forced into giving. Right after that event happened, I saw these people doing hot takes, giving their opinion on what the foreign policy should be there in response to that horrible terrorist attack, what should be done there, I kept my mouth shut because I didn't know enough to have an opinion on it. But I see all these people online like spouting off immediately. One of those people was this Nick Fuentes guy. And I did see a rise in actual anti-Semitism since then, online. I've seen it in my comments. So I'm saying it now. We're going to watch a little bit of this guy because, as I mentioned, the left have done such a great job of destroying the meaning of words and, calling everyone an anti-Semite, calling everyone a white supremacist, that just like many of you watching, I don't believe it anymore when they say that. Never. I never believe it. I have to take the time to go and research it and figure out what I think about this person. So a few years ago, I guess at some point I became somebody, I don't know at what point this guy, Nick Fuentes, came across my radar, but I heard people calling him these things, and I was like, whatever. They call me those things. They call, who did they call Larry Elder a white supremacist? Do you know what I mean? So I don't listen to that nonsense anymore. I don't listen to the mainstream. I don't listen to the left. When they say that, I'm immediately skeptical. And it takes a while because then you have to care enough, first of all, to investigate that person or try and listen to their actual words and see what they said. I didn't care enough until recently to look into him. But after having looked into him, I think this is one case where it's accurate. I think he's a charlatan. I think he's leading people down a dark path. I think he doesn't care about the consequences. I think he's using the name of God in vain. I think he's a false prophet. I think he's a wolf in shepherd's clothing. And I understand his appeal, just like Andrew Tate, because he says a lot of things that are true. There were people in my comments saying, but Keri, he says some things that are true. Yes. Duh. Has there ever been a con artist, a successful one, who didn't say some true things? They all do. I gave an example of this fascist dictator earlier. He said some true things. He was talking about some real problems. And he used that to push evil. People need to be more discerning. If your only criteria is this person says some true things, that I guess you truck with everybody in the world. I guess there are no bad actors then, because everybody says some true things. I'm going to show you some of the stuff that I watched of this guy. Let's start with this. And you're going to hear him say some true things here. And this is why he is appealing to some people. The other reason it's appealing is because if you live in a culture like we do, where currently the mainstream media, all the propaganda, none of it's saying true things. You're not allowed to say true things. And so if you get a fringe person who is pushing something dark, but saying the true things you're not allowed to say, it's attractive to people. This is why more people need to start speaking out against this madness. It can't just be these fringe evil people saying true things. If you're somewhere in the middle, I've talked about this before. I understand your fear about speaking up against social justice, against woke ideology, against the current day belief system. I understand your fear, but you have to learn how to get through that fear and get past it. You're an adult. It's very important. You can't have only these kind of charlatans saying true stuff and peppering it amongst their BS. Do you know who else said true things? A lot of true things. The Unabomber. He said a lot of true things. I've read his manifesto. What did he mix in with the true things? Evil. His solution was to kill people. There have to be people of good character saying true things, so that people of bad character saying true things are not as appealing. Okay, so here. This is a clip of him talking about white solidarity. I'm going to pause it and comment on it a little bit. And again, you're going to hear some things that are true and some things that are very bad ideas.
Whites are becoming a minority in a country that is increasingly militantly hostile and unfriendly. And what we need is for white people to show solidarity in resisting this. And we're not the only ones. I mean,
let me stop there. Let me just stop there. We need people to show solidarity in resisting this. To say we need white people to show solidarity, like white solidarity, you're appealing to identitarianism. You are appealing to collectivism. You're appealing to identity politics, racial identity politics. It's the same thing the social justice people appeal to. This is why I say it's the opposite side of the same coin. We need all people to show solidarity against this. I am a Christian. My brothers and sisters are fellow Christians. It's not white people. It's not women. It's not my identity groups. My identity is in Christ. What this guy is saying is your identity is in your race. You need solidarity with your race. No, that's what we currently have operating. The difference is he wants white people up here instead of down here, but it's the same thing.
I mean, I'm sure there are non-white people who would join us in that also, but there needs to be a white identity politics in the world in the face of this. And it's not enough to say as a white person that we want everybody. No, we just want everybody to be equal. White people must demand civil rights and protections for our people. And we need to demand that we close
our people. Again, his use of language. My people are not white people. It's so dumb. My people are my brothers and sisters in Christ. On a more local level, my people are my community. My people are my church. My people are my family and friends. I don't find my sense of identity, my sense of my people, in my race. You're doing the same thing that the social justice people do. You're pushing the same belief system, just the flip side of it. Just different arrangement of the identity groups, but it's the same thing.
Close our borders and shore up the demographics of white countries. Because I've seen the alternative. I've seen these guys like Tucker Carlson say the white identity politics is evil, and it's just as evil as black identity and all this other.
It is. I don't have pride or shame in anything white people have done. I don't have shame that the social justice people want me to have, you know, the ones who run around saying you're white privilege and that somehow you need to pay for the sins of the white people of the past. That's all nonsense. That's all racist nonsense. I don't have shame in it, and I don't have pride in it. Because it's not, my identity is not that, it's not race.
Stuff. And, you know, that's fine and well. And maybe you could have that conversation 100 years ago. But any white person that's saying that today is saying that while you're saying that 1 million immigrants just came into America, while some stupid cucked white guy is talking about how everybody should just drop the racial politics and get along, while he said that 1 million Africans just poured into Europe. And while he said that 1 million kids named Muhammad were just born in London for every one guy named James.
Now, this part, this is what I'm talking about, where he says some true things. This is why it's appealing, because the woke left, mainstream, the cult, you're not allowed to talk about this problem. You're not allowed to talk about problems with mass immigration. We're not supposed to acknowledge that this is happening, that there's a culture replacement, that we're not supposed to talk about this at all. And so I understand why this guy is appealing, despite his bad ideology of saying, so the solution then is to form an identity around your whiteness, basically. No.
So you can say that, and that's great. Good for you. But maybe we should have had that idea before we opened the floodgates. Now they're here and they're coming all the time. And as we speak, they're beating up on and fighting our people every day in the streets and in schools and in the boardroom and in the admissions office in college and in the bureaucracy of the government.
So again, when he says our people, he means white people. He's using the same exclusionary race-based language that social justice prophets use, that all of the mainstream uses. It's the same language.
So that ship has sort of sailed. This, we all need to drop our weapons at the same time and hold hands and sing Kumbaya. That ship has sailed at the moment. We need to talk about the fact that the white genocide is occurring, and maybe that would be one thing by itself, but it's occurring in an environment that is hostile towards white people. Whites are becoming a minority in a country that is...
Okay, here's some more like truth and BS all intermingled. Genocide is a word that is also starting to lose meaning because of the way it's being abused and misused, just like harm, just like woman, just like liberal, just like racist, just like sexist, just like anti-Semite. This word, genocide, has a very specific meaning, and you are belittling that meaning by using it in this way. If he's talking about demographics changing, yes, they are changing. Do I feel some... Am I worried about losing what percentage of the population is white? No, again, because my identity is not in whiteness. Am I worried about losing what percentage of the population has Western values? Yes, I am very worried about that. I'm very worried about the cultural shifts. I'm very worried about the shift in values. Yes. But he's blending that in, just like the woke do, with white identity, Western values and white identity, putting it together. The woke do the same thing when they talk about whiteness, and then they mention Western values. He's doing the same thing.
Increasingly militantly hostile and unfriendly.
Okay, I've got another one here I wanted to share. I think it's this one. Yeah, it's this one. Here we go.
Candace Owens thing, I think it's amazing. I think it's awesome. And when you see these Gentiles, the Gentiles are waking up. Guys like Alex Jones saying, stop calling me an anti-Semite. Charlie Kirk, you're calling me an anti-Semite, you lose a very powerful ally for Israel. Whoa, look at the balls on this one. Thomas Massey going after AIPAC. Never thought I'd see that coming. And Candace Owens and Matt Walsh staging a little revolt at Daily Wire, a little truth revolt.
Sorry, this is not the one about white identity that I thought it was. Not the port. Oh, this is the one. This is the one. Okay, again. This is, if you're not familiar with this guy, this is to show you why he's appealing, because he's going to say some things that are true, mixed in with the BS. Here we go.
This is a little picture of our future as white people. Apply to get into a great university, didn't get in. Yeah, well, there's just not enough seats to go around. And anyway, white people were racist at one point. So, oh, you applied to university and got in? Well, you don't get any student loan money. We ran out of it. Gave it all to black people and women. It's certainly unfortunate, but there's just not enough money to go around. Sorry. This
is all true. This is all happening or will be happening, the stuff he's predicting, the stuff he's saying. And again, it's appealing to people because the woke left mainstream does not allow for anyone to speak this truth. They push propaganda saying it's not happening. They push gaslighting propaganda constantly saying, denying the fact that a big part of social justice ideology is racism against white people. It's also racist against Black people because of the crazy bigotry of low expectation stuff they push, where they say whiteness means being on time and meritocracy and having a nuclear family, and whiteness means it's racist against everyone in different ways, but it's racist against everyone. But you're not allowed to say that. You don't see that truth in the mainstream. And so you got a guy like this on the fringe who's pushing white identity politics saying it. It's going to attract some people.
We're victims of prejudice at one point. Maybe you go to university, graduate, okay, whatever. Well, it's time to get a job. You're out of luck. If you're a white applicant, we're already done taking applications. We had 10 spots, and they've all been filled by Black people today. Your application wasn't processed because you weren't a priority group, because you were white, and you're not a socially disadvantaged. Hey, you're not a socially disadvantaged person. You're white. You didn't get into college. You didn't get student aid, and now you won't get this job. Why? Because you're not socially disadvantaged, because you're white. Certainly unfortunate, but there's not enough jobs to go around. Maybe you get the job. Yeah, well, you're not going to get the promotion. You're not going to get the mentorship because, well, it may be unfortunate, but these poor Black people were the victims of racism at one point. So
sorry, I had to mute myself during the end because someone's here and my dog is barking, but whoever that is not expected. So we're going to continue. Let me just take a quick break and look. I haven't been looking at the chat because I've been trying to just articulate this well and be careful with how I'm saying it so that I'm not misunderstood, so that people are hearing what I'm saying. And that's hard to do if you're paying attention to chat, but I appreciate you guys. Fernando for 249. Thank you, Fernando. Says, I can't be with y'all now, just saying hi. Well, hello to you. Good to see you again, our friend from Germany. Bulk Squat Thrust for $5. Thank you for the super chat. Says, many on what is the quote dissident right decided to just lean into the labels since the left uses it 24/7, 365. It's all awful. Yes. This is why psychologically I think it's appealing, and this is why I say the woke left is they're creating this boogeyman they want. They've been trying to sell us on this boogeyman that is white supremacist culture and there's white supremacists marching in the street, man, and they want that to be true. And they're fueling it. They're creating it. Because they use those labels 24/7, they use it incorrectly. You're going to be called that anyway. It's pushing people there. I absolutely agree. Thank you for the super chat. Clem62 for 2 Canadian buckaroos. Hello, Clem. He says you're very much appreciated, Keri. Well, thank you. You're very much appreciated. I appreciate you guys hanging with me while trying to talk about this. Miles Chang says, yeah, there is truth, but he also makes a victim group the same way the Blacks have become. Yes, he's because he's selling this identity politics, this idea that you should find your identity in your race or your sex. It's the same thing. Awesome one. Deviate from the word of God and we get our current chaos. I agree with you. As a Christian, I agree with you. Hammer Biotech says it's also explicitly anti-Christian, as these identity movements always have been. Yes, it is anti-Christian. And he tries to cloak it in Christianity. And that's what this phrase, this this meme that's been going around is an attempt to do the Christ is King meme with all the people in his audience, I guess, Nick Fuentes' audience, all these groypers, anti-Semites, using it is an attempt to subvert Christianity, an attempt to take the Lord's name in vain, to say something that they don't mean, but to cloak anti-Semitism in God. It's an awful thing to do. When I talked about this, there were people, as I mentioned, who were hearing things I didn't say, which I addressed, but also people who were asking questions like, "Are you saying I can't say Christ is King?" No, I'm not saying that at all. I believe Christ is King. I also believe Black Lives Matter, but I'm not going to be manipulated by these bad actors into taking a true statement, turning it into a mantra that's either meaningless or means something else than what it claims to mean, and just repeating it like a parrot. There's this weird thing going on in X where it's like, well, then say it, Christ is, say it. If you followed me for any amount of time and you don't know from my fruits that I believe Christ is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, then you're blind. Like, and it made me think of remember the Bart Simpson clip where all the kids are pressuring him, mocking him, and they're, say it, Bart, say it. They want him to say eat my shorts, and he's finally like, eat my shorts. He doesn't like, they bully him into saying it. It reminded me of that. And it's like, dude, get off. I don't let anyone bully me into repeating something. I also don't let them bully me into seeding words, like seeding as in CEDE, losing words. It's not gonna stop me from saying, like I just did, that yes, I do believe Christ is King, but they're not gonna manipulate me into suddenly peppering my language with it, which I've never done anyway. In all caps, I've seen in the past 2 days, not just these crazy, troll anti-Semites like the one I put on the screen at the beginning. I've seen self-professed anti-Christian influencers, people who have said that Christians should not be able to hold public office, that Christians should not be able to take their children to church, and the government should take their kids away if they take their kids to church because they're grooming them into Christianity. People who have said they hate Christians so much they would rather live in a Marxist world than in a Christian world. I have seen these self-professed anti-Christians suddenly posting in all caps, Christ is King, which tells you everything you need to know about what it means to some of the people saying it, which is nothing, or which is screw the Jews. It's very easy to tell who is a bad actor who's saying it and who's an actual Christian. And so just be aware, just be discerning, that's all. I don't think you should stop saying anything. I also don't think you should allow manipulators to coerce you into taking a truth and spitting it out like a mantra that means something else. So just be discerning. I hope this makes sense. If you have questions, if I'm not articulating this well, feel free to ask me. And if you disagree, feel free to let me know below. Therese, imagine hate watching a stream and arguing with people instead of just watching something you agree with. Oh, are people doing that? I haven't been paying attention, so thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. Okay, I've got a couple more here. So I showed you some of those clips. I've got a couple more clips of the Nick Fuentes guy, because like I said, it took me a while to actually do my research and figure out what I thought about him and whether this characterization of him was accurate. I do think in his case, one of the few people I've ever looked into, I do think it's accurate. Most of the time when the media says that about someone, it's not true. So I understand being skeptical. If you have not looked into him yet yourself, here's another clip. This is where I guess he was debating debating Alex Jones, and they were having a conversation with him, and they started talking about Hitler. Here we go.
You actually admire?
I watched the whole thing. I mean, I watched it on.
Sorry, there's a couple. I think these are leftists. Who this is on their show. We're just gonna. I'm not sure who these people are, but we're gonna get to the clip.
Double speed, but I watched the whole thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's take a look at the video and then we'll react.
So let's just get the Hitler thing out of the way. Do you actually admire Adolf Hitler?
In some ways, yes. And I'm not a national socialist, and I'm not I wouldn't identify that way because I'm a Christian. So I'm not any kind of a socialist or a fascist. I like Ye believe we should have a Christian government. It's a Christian country. God runs the world. We should have a government in accordance with that. But honestly, I don't share this histrionic Jewish view that Hitler is this exceptionally boogeyman, evil figure. The 20th century is full of violence. The 20th century is full of authoritarian ideologies run rampant, and that's a product of modernism and liberalism and all kinds of trends. But this idea that my life is in any way impacted by Hitler, I have a lot more animosity for the ADL. I have a lot more animosity.
Now, this is weird because he asked him, "Do you admire Hitler?" And the dude says, "Yes." In some ways, yes. And then he just sort of changes the subject and says, he's not the boogeyman they've created, but there are lots of boogeymen in history. And then he starts talking about how because Hitler is not impacting his life. Of course he's not. He's not impacting my life either, other than the fact that morons like you are having some sort of influence on the fringe of society that concerns me about decades to come. And speaking about him in this way of like, yes, I admire some things about him. He doesn't really get back to what he admires about him. I'm going to show you this one now. This was from it's a little tiny video. I'm going to apologize. You can't really see it, but you can hear him. This was from the Kanye West forum on Reddit. Somebody shared this. They were like, who is this guy? Is this the guy that, Kanye's been hanging out with? And they put this clip up. Let's see if you can hear this.
Former President
No, that's very low.
Former President Donald Trump, who announced his latest bid for the White House earlier this month, was joined at a dinner last week at Mar-a-Lago by Nick Fuentes.
Maybe just get rid of Congress altogether after that happens. Here's the pathway. We have one more election where white people can make the decision. The white people got to make the right decision, and then Trump's got to get in there and never leave. I don't believe in democracy. I do not believe in universal suffrage. I don't support women's rights. I don't support LGBT rights. I believe in race and gender essentialism. I'm Catholic. I'm a Catholic reactionary. I believe that organized Jewry is extremely influential in the United States. We need to go back to burning women alive more. The Jews had better start being nice to people like us, because what comes out of this is going to be a lot uglier and a lot worse for them than anything that's being said on this show or has been said on this show. These left-wing people in their...
I mean, he's telling you right there what he would like to see, which is this one possibility that I fear for the future. It's going to be a lot worse for you, Jewish people, when we take power. Okay. Yeah. Yes, for people who haven't seen this kind of stuff. Yeah, whoa, it is crazy, right? And the weird thing is, he has suddenly been getting, ever since October 7th, more, I would say, more kind of mainstream influencers who are now, in some cases, promoting his videos, like giving him more uncritical access to their followers, sort of, promoting him by well, he's right about this thing, and sharing a video. And it's like, be more discerning. Some of the people doing this, I think, are just as evil as he is. And some of them, I think, they just have bad judgment. And you need to become better at judging bad characters. I don't truck with bad characters once I learn what they are. I don't care if they say one thing I agree with. I'm not giving them access other than to criticize them in this format. I'm not going to retweet something they said that I happen to agree with if they are a monster. I see that happening, or I've seen it since October 7th with this guy. Whoever allowed Trump to sit down with him at that lunch should have been more discerning, should have used better judgment, in my opinion. Yes, in this case, there are bad characters. There are bad actors. It is good to be discerning. Freedom of association. I don't believe in guilt by association, but I also believe in freedom of association. I'm going to continue this clip.
Their heart of hearts, they know they're wrong because, like, they know that Black people are violent. You know, I will say, hey, Black people are violent. And then they'll go, I bet you wouldn't say that in front of a Black person. Why? Because they're a thug that'll hit me. Hitler was a German statesman. Not even joking this much. I would prefer Taliban rule in America to this. You want to know why? Because at least if Black people were fighting at the airport, they would get their hands cut off.
He didn't invent racism, but he's certainly given a voice to it. And
I don't know why this person included a clip of AOC there talking at the end, talking about Trump. She's not talking about Nick Fuentes. Actually, I do know why, because they're trying desperately currently to tie MAGA and to tie Trump and to tie the whole of the Republican Party and all conservatives to freaks like Nick Fuentes. And actually, when I was looking for videos about this guy to try and make up my mind about him, I found a lot of mainstream leftist social justice videos where they would show something of his and then they would show something of Trump's and try to say, see? And this is why people don't trust the mainstream media. That's why you have to go to source videos. You have to go to source material. You have to make your opinion on your own. You can't trust the mainstream media. They're freaking deceivers. And as I said earlier, most of the time when they call someone a white supremacist or an anti-Semite or a racist or a sexist or a bigot or any of these things or homophobic or transphobic, they're lying 99% of the time. It's the boy who cried wolf. Even in the articles I found about him, the leftist mainstream media, they don't quote him. So I couldn't be sure. I had to go and find the videos because they just tell you, like they do with everyone that they lie about. They just say he's a white supremacist and he's an anti-Semite, but they never give you the evidence. And so, they make it hard. So I understand why a lot of people on the right, having seen how those words are abused, just see that about him and are like, well, it must be a lie because it's a lie about everyone else. Somebody who gave the super chat earlier who said this is anti-Christian, racism is anti-Christian. It is. Finding your identity in your race or your sex, it's not what Jesus preached. There's a Bible verse I wanted to make sure that I shared. Galatians 3, 28 through 30. There is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. If you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. This is where my identity comes from, is from Christ. My brothers and sisters are my brothers and sisters in Christ. It's not white people. I have to laugh at it. It's so ridiculous. It's not white people. It's not women. It's not straight people. It's fellow believers. I think it's disgusting what they're trying to do with the very true phrase, Christ is king. But I also think it's going to fail. I mean, they're trying to subvert the words of our Creator Most High, who is the truth, who is the life, who is the way. They are no match for him. So it will fail. I guess in watching all this unfold, I just was a little disappointed in humanity, and once again reminded of how humans are reactionary, how they are made to follow. We are made to follow. I believe we are made to follow God. But how many end up following despots and kooks and hero worshiping humans. And I was a little disappointed in humanity. So I was like, like I said, my husband and I talked about it last night for a long time and talked about what the future might hold. He also recently watched, two things. He's reading a book about the CIA, which is very eye-opening. And we were kind of saying, you can't trust anything, anything from our government. We'll probably never know what's going on in the world. Some people, when I was talking about this online, they said, I think people like Nick Fuentes are fed, or, I think these are ops. And I'm like, it may be. He may be. I have no idea. But either way, the fact that people are following him with what he's saying, that's disturbing to me about the state of humanity, that there are some people, a fringe. Yes, it's disturbing to me, whether he's a Fed or not, whether any of these people get called feds or not. But yeah, you can't trust the government. You can't trust. And so the other thing my husband recently watched was a video about nuclear war. It was an interview with the author of a book about how many times we've narrowly avoided nuclear war, about the whole process of like the state we're at now, how long it takes for nuclear warheads, how long it would take for one to reach the US, how much time you have to respond as the president. And it was very sobering for him, because it was a reminder that we are not in control of anything. And so, that we are in control of some things. Most of those things are very close to us. The things that we can control: ourselves, our behavior, the way we treat other people, how we choose to spend our time. We can control those things. Most of the other things we spend all this time arguing about, talking about, we don't have any control over. And when he was telling me about this, I remembered when I first started listening to Jordan Peterson, who helped me immensely, around 2016 or 2017. I remember he said he went through a period, maybe it was in the 80s or 90s, but I remember he said he went through a period where he just sort of became obsessed with the realization that, life could end for all of humanity very quickly because of the threat of nuclear war, and sort of this put him in this state of despair for a while. I remember him talking about that. Maybe if you're in the chat, you know which lecture I'm talking about, but I think it was an old one actually. But it made me think of that, and it also made me think about how I'm so grateful to God for so many things, for pursuing me despite my rebellion, my anger, my running from him, because I have this beautiful sense of peace, even living in a chaotic world, that I would not have had without God. And if you're a non-believer, you'll probably think this is the weird, sappy part of Keri's video. I don't know how to explain it, but it's this, I believe in a creator who is the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end of all things. And I believe our time here on earth, like when you are reminded of how quickly it could end, or when we are reminded of our mortality, or of when we think about the possibility of terrible things to come in the future, it helps put things in perspective. We are the creatures who forget. Humans are. My friend Cameron Pasha said that in Islam, in Arabic, the word for human literally means the creature that forgets, and the word for prayer literally means to remember. And I think about that a lot because I think we are the creatures who forget. We forget every day what's most important, what's meaningful. You can get pulled in so many meaningless directions. I do. And we forget about mortality. I think most humans spend the majority of our lives just in denial about mortality. We forget how short this experience is. And I think it just helped to put all this in perspective for me again yesterday, thinking about the purpose of life, how I spend my time. I think it's to work to glorify God here on earth. I think it's to follow God's path. I think it's the best path for a reason. I think and the Bible says it's a narrow path because it's not an easy path, but it's so rewarding. And it's to try and glorify God and to interrogate yourself and to constantly be surrendering more of yourself to God, more of your ego, more of your strongholds, more of your crutches, more of your bad behaviors. It's a continual process and very rewarding, and it gives you a sense of peace. And so trying to end on a somewhat positive note, because I did feel, even at the end of us talking about all of this and potentially terrible things to come in the future, I still feel joy. I still feel peace. I work on Saturdays. Saturday, I was outside a lot, and as part of my job. And here in Texas, this time of year is bluebonnet season. It's wildflower season. And Lady Bird Johnson, when Johnson was governor of Texas, his wife, Lady Bird Johnson, she had the whole state like scatter wildflowers along all the Texas highways. And that was started by her. And so if you drive through any Texas highway this time of year, it's beautiful. It's not just bluebonnets. There are Mexican hats and Indian blankets and fire wheels and black-eyed Susans and daisies and just everything. The daisies came up early this year. So they're all out there together in the fields of blue. And it's just beautiful. I get to live in this beautiful place and time. And yes, the world's chaotic. Yes, people are falling prey to evil ideology like they have throughout all of human history. And all you have control over is yourself and how you spend your time. So I'm going to get emotional. So I'm going to end it. My husband likes to laugh whenever I get emotional. He's like, is it your time of the month? It's sort of a joke, but it actually, sometimes it does make you more emotional. Ladies, some of these stereotypes are true. Okay. If there's anything you wanted me to answer, let me know. I'm going to wrap it up here soon. Real Raven, have a nice spring, Keri. I hope you have a nice spring too, and Easter. I love this time of year. It's like my favorite time of year. As says, you can't fix the world, but you can fix your world. Yes. And here's the crazy thing. I now think that's the way you fix the world. You know that quote that a lot of people on the left say, which is, be the change you want to see in the world? actually started thinking about that a lot when I left social justice ideology, when I left the woke cult. And I think that quote means you can only be the change you want to see in the world by changing yourself, like improving yourself, your behavior, your sphere of influence, how you look at the world, how you behave in the world, how you treat other people. That's it. And if it's it has to happen individual by individual. And if you are a Christian, I believe you shall know them by their fruits. People will see that light in you. They will see God in you, even if they don't recognize it as God. And other people will their lights will come on for having been in your sphere of influence. That's happened to me. God has shown me that. There were people who affected me, and there are people I affect, and it's just I think that's the way it works. It's like an individual thing. Therese, great show, Keri. Have a good week. Aw, thanks, Therese. Yes, Brahma Bull. Okay. I know I talked about a lot of Christianity, or a little bit of it today, but we are doing a Christian panel on Wednesday, 6 o'clock Central, here on Deprogrammed. Be here or be square. And Brahma Bull's going to be there. I'll let you know what the topic is a little later. We've been going back and forth. I will say, we were originally going to watch the movie Cabrini, but now Michelle can't be here this Wednesday, so we might wait. But I've heard so many good things about this movie. If we don't do it this Wednesday, which we're probably not, we'll do it in a couple weeks. So everybody, go and watch Cabrini if you want to see it before we discuss it. I've heard good things about this from like 5 or 6 different people. So my expectations are kind of high. Okay. I think that's it. Oh, Jester Verona, nice to meet you. Thanks for becoming a member. I think I recognize you. Okay, guys. Happy weekend. Happy Easter. I'll see you on Wednesday for the Christian panel. Take care.